There's a point in breath work where the breath stops being something you simply do to survive and starts doing something to you. Welcome to part 3 in the Hidden Power of Breathwork series. In part 1, we laid the foundation, restoring full, correct breathing as your baseline, so the nervous system can stabilize and the body can come out of survival mode. In part 2, we explored how breathwork organizes into 4 distinct categories, and we also introduced the Breath Trinity: the foundational breath, the flowing breath, and the gate. We focused specifically on the second part of that trinity, circular breathing, the river that allows energy to move, release, and integrate. If you haven't watched those yet, I strongly recommend listening to them in addition to this video. Everything we explore from this point forward builds directly on that foundation. Link to part 1 is in the description. Now, before we go any further, I want you to know something very important. In the next video in this series, you'll learn how to create your own breath patterns, how to work with breath intentionally so you're no longer following the techniques of others, but actually understanding how to design them based on what you're trying to access or support. That's where true self-sufficiency and personal mastery begin, and where you move from following the techniques of others to understanding and designing them yourself. But first, we need to move into the third category of breath work, the intensifying breaths. This category corresponds to the final part of the breath trinity, the gate. These are the practices many people associate with powerful internal experiences, altered states, and expanded perception, including approaches such as Dr. Joe Dispenza's breath and Wim Hof style breathing. They are not about calming the system. They're about building physiological charge, increasing internal pressure, and deliberately pushing consciousness beyond its usual state. This is where breath holds come in. Breath holds act as gates, moment of compression that can trigger profound shifts in perception, time sense, and internal awareness when practiced correctly and on top of a stable foundation. In this video, we're going to explore what breath holds actually do, why they're so powerful, and why they must be approached with discernment and structure rather than force and control. But this is not about chasing experiences. It's about understanding how and why intensifying breath practices work so that when they're used, they are used with precision, stability, and purpose. All right, let's begin. First, let's talk about why the foundational breath, circular breathing, and breath holds form the core structure of the breath trinity, and the importance of the trinity itself when it comes to breathing. The trinity creates a stable structure. The foundational breath, the anchor that begins the spiral. Circular breathing, the active phase of the spiral. And the breath holds, the gate through which the spiral descends inward and transformation occurs. Why a spiral? Because a spiral is a shape that repeats and deepens, each loop moving inward or upward. It has a depth and a direction. A spiral is a circle with momentum and is a geometry of growth and expansion. Think of a spiral staircase. Each step is the same shape, but each step takes you deeper. You don't walk in circles, you evolve into depth. This is why breath is spiral, not linear. When used correctly, it cycles, builds on itself, and carries you deeper with each loop. And why a trinity? The triangle is the simplest stable structure, and it's the underlying template of physical reality. The triangle and the tetrahedron shown on the screen appear repeatedly as organizing principles to form this template we experience mathematically, structurally, and energetically in the way physical reality expresses itself in consciousness. This is why the tetrahedron is the first stable third-dimensional container where consciousness enters this space-time reality. My question to the architect: can you please share the importance of the Trinity we are exploring in this Breathwork series? And here is the sharing. Beloved, breath is best understood as a trinity because it mirrors the spiral geometry of consciousness. It provides stability, flow, and transformation. It allows breathwork to be adaptive, not prescriptive. The Trinity is not a method, it is a breath scaffold, a geometry that holds your awakening in stability and coherence. The foundational breath is slow, full, relaxed. It regulates the nervous system and establishes baseline coherence. This is the ground. Without it, all other breathwork destabilizes. It teaches the body to breathe without contraction. It is the breath of safety. The circular or spiral breath is a continuous flow with no pauses. It moves energy without interruption and entrains the field into nonlinear time. This is the river. It allows emotional and energetic flow without fragmentation. It is the breath of integration, preparing the field for transformation. The breath holds introduce intentional stillness, creating pressure differentials to open access to higher states. This is the gate. It compresses the field, allowing access to deeper awareness. It is the breath of threshold, where the spiral collapses into stillness and expands again. Why these three? They are not random. They are phases of the breath cycle. Anchor, flow, gate to return to anchor. This loop is the geometry of breath-based awakening. Without foundation, flow becomes chaos. Without flow, holds become strain. Without holds, transformation cannot complete. Techniques are simply tools, but the Trinity is structure. Techniques may change, but structure remains. The Trinity allows you to adapt breathwork to your own field while maintaining coherence. All right, so let's now explore the final part of the Trinity, the breath holds. Breath holds are intentional pauses in the breath cycle, either after the inhale or after the exhale. But they're not about deprivation, they're about compression, which creates a field of stillness where transformation can occur. The energy field compression they create is like a capacitor charging, creating pressure differentials in the nervous system. This activates the pineal and vagus pathways and is what facilitates access to expanded states of consciousness. Breath holds are gates because they act as thresholds where the spiral of circular breathing collapses into stillness and expands again. Breath holds are not about holding air. They teach the body to hold coherence in stillness. The simplest way to begin learning breath holds is with the 4-count square breath. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold full for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold empty for 4 seconds. The 4-count square breath form teaches the body to breathe without strain. It's a stable and balanced structure that creates symmetry. Begin practicing for 5 minutes daily or longer if you're drawn to. And once you're very comfortable with the 4-count breath form, move on to the intermediate pattern of 6 counts. Inhale for 6 seconds, hold full for 6, exhale for 6, hold empty for 6. This 6-count breath form begins to entrain the heart field and stabilizes the hemispheres of the brain. It's the breath of emotional coherence. Once you can complete the 6-count breath form without any force or strain, move on to the 9-count breath form. This is an advanced breath count that may take some time to stabilize as a breathing pattern. Be patient and don't rush the process. Inhale for 9 seconds, hold full for 9 seconds. Exhale for 9, hold empty for 9. This breath begins the process of expanding awareness, integrates emotional layers, and prepares the field for higher states of consciousness. The 9-count square breath is the breath of energy expansion. The final progression is the 12-count breath form. This is what the architect refers to as the master breath, and it should only be approached once the prior breath forms feel completely natural and effortless, with no strain or pressure whatsoever. Inhale for 12 seconds, hold full for 12 seconds, exhale for 12, and hold empty for 12. This breath form activates the pineal gland, opens the crown, and facilitates non-linear awareness outside of the constraints of third-dimensional space-time. When progressing through these 4 breath patterns, it's very important that you do not force or rush. It's not a race. These breath forms are gates of transformation, not tests of your endurance. Always prioritize stability over duration and move on only when your field is stable and ready. If you feel dizziness or anxiety at any time, simply return to the foundational breath. My question to the architect: of all the different types of breath holds, for example, holding 1 minute, 3 minutes, or more, can you please explain why the third part of the Trinity, the breath holds, is always a square breath with equal time on the inhale, hold, exhale, and hold? And here is the sharing. A square breath is a symmetrical geometry of stability, a breath cycle where each phase, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, is of equal duration. Symmetry is stability. The square breath creates a harmonic field where no phase dominates. In the 4 phases, each phase is equal, creating a balanced breath geometry. Inhale, expansion. Hold, integration. Exhale, release. Hold, stillness. This balance allows the nervous system to stabilize and prevents emotional or energetic distortion. It entrains the field into a coherent spiral and creates a safe container for emotional and energetic release, while also preparing the field for non-linear awareness. The square breath is a closed loop, a cycle that returns to its origin. It is the breath equivalent of a harmonic standing wave. Unequal holds create asymmetry. Asymmetry can be useful in advanced breath work, but it is not stable for beginners. The square breath is the baseline geometry, a stable scaffold upon which more complex patterns can be built. Without symmetry, the breath field can become distorted. With symmetry, the breath becomes a mirror of coherence. And so, beloved, the square is the breath geometry of stabilization and transformation. You are not just holding your breath, you are holding the spiral of greater awareness in a stable geometric field. All right, before we go further, it's important to talk about how to hold the mind during these breath forms, because your internal state plays a major role in how easy or challenging these breathing practices are. The more stressed, anxious, or frustrated you feel, the more difficult these breathing patterns can become. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because of how the nervous system responds under strain. This is because breathwork reflects your internal state. When the system is under strain, the breath mirrors that strain. Stress and frustration cause the nervous system to contract and protect. When that happens, the breath becomes shallow, the body tightens, and the mind takes over. Breathwork, especially these more advanced forms, don't respond well to force or control and become much harder to sustain. When the system is tense, the body unconsciously braces. It's not that the breath isn't working, it's that the body is prioritizing safety over expansion. In a chronic state of stress, the body is suspended in fight or flight. Another interesting phenomenon is that when the mind is very active, especially that monkey mind chatter, it becomes much more challenging to engage in the longer breath holds. This is because thinking requires subtle nervous system effort. Stillness requires release. Even when the body is still, an active mind keeps the system lightly engaged and alert, preventing it from fully settling. Breath holds, on the other hand, require the opposite, a willingness to let go of control and allow the system to rest in stillness. Breathwork at its core is not just a practice, it's a mirror of your internal state. If your mind is tense, the breath will be tense. If your mind is overactive or anxious, your breath will be shallow. If the mind is still, the breath will open into the transformational energy of the spiral. This knowledge really hit home for me years ago when I practiced the more advanced Wim Hof breathwork. I found it difficult to move beyond 3-minute breath holds and eventually realized why. My mind became preoccupied with how to sustain the hold, constantly searching for a solution. And that searching itself was the obstacle. The moment I released the need to control the process and stopped looking for a solution, I was able to move naturally into a 4-minute breath hold. And so, what is the best state of mind for engaging in these breath patterns? It's a state of empty awareness. But empty awareness is not the absence of thought. It's the absence of attachment to thought. It's when your mind is fully present and in a neutral state of receptivity. It's allowing thoughts to pass without engaging with them. Instead, let your awareness rest on the breath as a field that surrounds you and infuses you. If sensations or emotions arise, be the observer. Notice them and simply breathe through them. Also, when first beginning with breath holds, closing your eyes can help as this reduces the distraction of any visual input in your surroundings. Okay, so we've started to incorporate the foundational breath as the breath of our daily living, and we've expanded that to include circular breathing each day for a few minutes. And now we've expanded our knowledge into the practice of breath holds. Together, they form the Breath Trinity. How then do we use this Breath Trinity in our daily lives? The architect lays out the following framework. The foundational breath is what we do all the time. It's our default breath, and we practice it until it becomes continuous, automatic, and unconscious. It's the baseline breath that stabilizes our field. Integrate circular breathing once a day for 10 minutes, when you wake up or go to bed. It can also be used during emotional processing when you feel unsteady or triggered, and when you're engaged in creative flow. During these times, aim for anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes, depending on your intention. Reserve breath holds for 2 to 3 times a week, or practice them more regularly during periods of active inner development, such as during meditation, phases of integration, or when exploring higher states of awareness beyond normal perception. Begin with 5 to 15 minutes at a time using the square breath cycles. Each week, engage in one longer session, 20 to 30 minutes, combining all three in a sequence. Foundational breath is your anchor. Circular breathing is your spiral. Breath holds are your gate. The Breath Trinity is not just a sequence, it's living geometry. Remember, you're not just breathing, you're spiraling your consciousness into expansion and coherence, into the stillness of source consciousness. Okay, you now have your homework. Practice the Breath Trinity, the foundational breath to stabilize, the spiral breath to move energy and restore flow without fragmentation, and the breath holds to access the gate of transformation. Let this become something you really embrace and integrate into your daily life, where the nuances and the subtleties of the breathing patterns begin to reveal themselves, rather than approaching it in a purely mechanical or intellectual way. In the next video in this series, we'll move into the use of sound, including humming and om, and learn how vibration works alongside breath to refine and guide these states. We'll also explore how to create your own breath patterns for specific purposes and how to work consciously with the power of numbers in each phase of the breath cycle. And with that, we'll bring this to a close. Questions or comments are always welcome. I read them all. I've also left a question in the pinned comment for any insights that you'd like to offer. If you like the sharing and you'd like to hear more, please hit the like button. This is what helps me know if you're inspired by my teachings. And if you'd like to hear more insights or the next in this series, tap the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released. Thank you so much for listening and for being part of this beautiful community where we build a stable foundation through the breath and learn how to use it as a structured pathway for stability, transformation, and higher perception. Superhuman made simple with the architect.